All right, so good afternoon, guys. So I guess we can now start our free cybersecurity workshop for beginners. Are you guys all okay there? If you are all good, please type 1 in the chat box. If you can hear me or if you're okay, please type in number 1 in the chat box, please. All right. Thank you so much for participating, Wallstrom, Christine, Sasan. All right. So I'd like to welcome everyone in our free workshop. So I'm so excited for today for our workshop because today we'll be learning about cybersecurity for beginners. So I hope everyone has prepared their notebooks for this very valuable workshop. And this workshop is particularly designed for individuals who want to learn the basics of cybersecurity and how it is essential in the tech industry now. So not only will we gain valuable knowledge and skills, but we will also learn about the different career opportunities available in cybersecurity and how to break into the field. So our guys, are your notes ready? Are we all ready? Please type me if you're ready. In the chat box, please type me if you're ready. All right, let's see. Okay, so you guys are ready. So now, before I introduce our speaker, I'd like you to get your phones and maybe scan if you want to join our Discord server. So our Discord server is a students networking community. So you can take a screenshot, scan this, for later purposes. So there we have a self-study channel wherein you can network with fellow peers who are also in the same goal of breaking into our tech industry. All right, so without further ado, I will now introduce our speaker for today. So our speaker for today is a cybersecurity consultant from Oceanside, California. He is a cybersecurity professional with experience in defensive and offensive cyber operations. Wow. So he also holds various certifications such as CISSP or Certified Information System Security Professional, OSCP or Offensive Security Certified Professional, Pentest Plus, and Security Plus. This guy also holds a master's degree in cybersecurity and information assurance from Western Governors University. So guys, let us all welcome Drake Caruso. Hi Drake.
Hey everyone, thanks for that intro, Aldrich.
Right. So Drake, the screen is yours now.
Okay, great. Hey everyone, thanks for coming and attending this workshop. So we're gonna go over some of this interest to cybersecurity. I just want to go over first off the common question that we have is what is cybersecurity? So straight from IBM, cybersecurity is the practice of protecting critical systems and sensitive information from digital attacks. You can also refer to cybersecurity as IT security. Some of these the defensive measures that we have for IT security, you know, is all going to be focused on combating threats against network systems. You know, threats could be top level hackers from nation states. They could be from just from in like maybe someone's house, just a maybe a novice running scripts from their computer at home, just trying to break into companies like Amazon, all depending on what their overall goal is. So they could also be going for maybe financial gains. So they're going for Wells Fargo and other top money producing companies as well. Um, so I kind of want to go over some of the cybersecurity domains here. Share my screen. Um, so can everybody see my screen? Type in yes or Y in the chat if you can see my screen. Okay, great. So talking about these cybersecurity domains, you know, when it comes to cybersecurity and providing defense to a enterprise network, there's going to be a lot of defense in depth, a lot of layers. So just to be able to protect against cybercrime and cyber attacks, you got to focus on the different parts of information technology in a sense. So our networking, we have various different networking devices. So for example, our routers. We could also have some sort of Wi-Fi integration. So our wireless access points. So that would be within the network security domain. So starting from the top there, critical infrastructure security. It's basically practices for protecting computer systems and networks. So that's just as a whole, what is our critical infrastructure? What makes up our enterprise network? So starting from the employee workstations, their normal computers or laptops, whatever they use to get their work done, all the way up to servers that handle maybe websites for the company, database systems. So for a company to protect all this, they need to get an understanding of what they actually have in their enterprise network, so they can go and do their risk analysis and determine how critical is this asset, what kind of data is it is coming in and out of it, to kind of put an idea of maybe we need to protect this asset first rather than employee workstation. So it all depends on what they perceive as the risk for these systems. Jumping down, our application security. So think in terms of what the customer, maybe even the employee and whoever else is trying to access these company systems, what they see, what is presented in front of them. So for me, for example, I have my web browser in front of me. I'm connected to IBM's web application right now, their web server, and this is their application. So determining whether this application is hosted internally in their network and is it cloud based. So that all comes together and kind of determines what is I guess an entry point, what is vulnerability, and so forth for these systems. Another domain, cloud security. So think about in terms of AWS, for Amazon, Microsoft, Azure. So how do these cloud providers, these third-party providers, protect our information whenever we archive data on their servers, use their services such as application as a service, software as a service. So are we using a particular software that they're hosting for us? For example, may use Microsoft Office 365. So information security, this kind of boils down to basically general data protection regulation. So we need to secure our most sensitive data from unauthorized access, exposure, or theft. It's just getting an understanding of what the company processes in forms of data, whether it be payment, card transactions, HIPAA information such as healthcare. Are they like a hospital? Other forms could be personally identifiable information, and they're going to be bound to strict federal regulations. So other domains could be end user education, which is just building a security awareness program for an organization, teaching someone else is joining, teaching your end users to handle what they do on their computers according to security policy and acceptable use policies, what they can and can't do, what they can, for example, go to in terms of on company time. Can they browse to YouTube, and are they not allowed to go to social media and so forth? Then kind of breaks down to various different plannings and continued operation plans, like disaster recovery, how they can repair that, systems that may come down due to a natural disaster. And then it kind of gets more in depth in terms of how you're going to handle storage, how you're going to handle mobile security. So let's think about in terms of the normal cybersecurity job. So we break it down a lot. So we have these IT security consultants. You can be a systems administrator. You can continue to go up the ladder and be a security architect, a security engineer, a penetration tester, all the way up to the C-suite, which would be the chief information security officer. In my perspective, as you start off in cybersecurity, the best thing to do is to get an understanding of what is available to you in terms of knowledge you can gain. Where do you currently stand? How much do you know IT? You could always go to particular sites in terms of like CompTIA if you want to get certification, just to build yourself up. From my own experience, I started off growing up with computers and building computers, and I pretty much knew the hardware side, but I didn't know the networking side. If you don't really know how networking works and how systems interact with each other, then it's kind of hard to get an understanding of how to secure those systems. So here's an example from CompTIA in terms of a certification pathway for cybersecurity. So depending on where you're at, maybe you're not too familiar with hardware or networking and security and so forth. There's always the ITF, just IT fundamentals by CompTIA. As you move up, you kind of need to know the hardware, the networking, and then you can understand the security from that perspective. And then once you break into security, say you're information security analyst, and then you can start to move towards the offensive or defensive side, pen testing, and maybe like a cyber network defender, computer network defender. And after all that, it kind of goes down to becoming a chief information security officer. So CASP. I've done this certification. It's on the management side and technical application side. So how do you if you have a particular network and management wants to implement this type of security control, how do you go about doing it? It's kind of like on that perspective. But here's just an example. Say if you decide you want to go the certification path. There's other stuff online as well you can use. There's a lot of great videos on YouTube. I've used those a lot. I've done Professor Messer videos. He does a lot on some of these certifications. You don't have to necessarily get a certification, but it's a great place to start. Just being able to understand where you currently stand, where you currently are in terms of knowledge, and just growing from there. I'm always continuously learning in this field. Starting from IT, basic IT, to security, defense, and currently I'm doing pen testing. So I've had to learn a lot. I've had to understand these systems inside and out, and it's been very beneficial to me to just continue to learn these things. There's always different technologies as well that come out. So there's always different types of firewalls coming out. Always different, I would say, systems in terms of different vendors offer a wide range of security solutions that you have available, whether it's to automate pen testing, automate vulnerability assessment. So understanding what the systems within a enterprise network are vulnerable to. But it's just continuing to go out there and getting a feel for what you can improve on. So you can always start at IT help desk and continue to build your knowledge. And once you truly understand everything in terms of networking and hardware, you can start to build off of security. So understanding what a firewall is, what an intrusion detection system is, what an intrusion prevention system is. The fundamental principle of security is understanding the CIA triad and how to apply that to aspects of the network. So CIA triad, breaking it down to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Excuse me. So confidentiality, you need to understand that the company needs to maintain their data, and it's trying to prevent unauthorized access. So in terms of confidentiality, you can simply implement encryption. So if someone were to obtain data through a breach, they can't necessarily view it unless they were to break the encryption. Integrity, being able to say that hey, our data is intact, there's no unauthorized modification to it. We can create a hash of this data and say, hey, it hasn't changed. So that's basically integrity there. And availability. So Amazon, for example, has a particular availability in terms of, hey, we're up 99.9999% of the time, meaning they're only down for like a minute or so to do updates. And as a customer, you expect that. So just think in terms of how detrimental that would be if they were to be down more than maybe a minute, and maybe they're down 30 minutes. You can imagine how much revenue is lost during that time frame. So you can see how availability is critical. And as you get into service level agreements between a company and a vendor, basically it's just a binding contract stating that the vendor is going to provide this customer with this amount of availability, whether it's say, for example, a security operations center providing a customer with 24/7 detection and analysis of their network and so forth. So there's a lot to cybersecurity, and there's a lot of entry points that you can get into. Starting off from the security analyst side. There's plenty of people who find out that they are good at pen testing, and so they begin to do that and jump right into pen testing. So there's that avenue. Could always be a forensic analysis, collecting data off of systems after maybe an incident occurs, and analyzing forensics on an operating system like Windows or Linux. That's kind of a breakdown of there. So I'll get into some of these there's some jobs to say if we were to go on and look at Indeed, for example. So we can see I didn't set an exact area, so but there's about 30,000 jobs. Let's say if I put California in general, how many are in California in terms of cybersecurity. So depends on what they put. Location, I'm trying to so information security. So you can go based off the location. You can see how everything's broken down. There's different areas: Washington, New York, But you can do application security engineer. It'll give you a breakdown what you can do. So this job, they're doing web app pen testing as well. They're working within the software development lifecycle. So the software development lifecycle is during the time in which a program, from inception to its overall ending. Yes, the recording should be available. So from inception of the program to its overall ending when it's no longer supported. Like for example, let's say Windows operating system like Windows XP, it has its own end of life, which is past already. So when it's no longer supported, that's when the secure development lifecycle ends. So there's a lot that goes into the SDLC. For example, the management's going to do planning, what the customer wants in terms of features, and there's going to be threat analysis, threat modeling, how someone could go in and break points of this application, whether it's on the user side or the system side, process flows. Excuse me. Moving on to endpoint security. So these are mainly more of a higher level tier, but just giving you an example of what they tend to do. Like this endpoint security engineer, so they're engineering basically solutions for security. So implementing the SIEM, endpoint detection and response platforms. So they could be implementing IDS, intrusion detection systems, and firewalls. So here's a good thing right here. You need to know the MITRE attack framework. So if you go look at MITRE, that gives you an example of how different, let's say for example, different threats, maybe advanced persistent threat groups. Say for example, there's a Chinese advanced persistent threat group. I can't think of a number off the top of my head, but they're usually labeled numbers. Let's say where they're based off of what they target, how they go about doing their different attacks, starting from initial foothold to exfiltrating data. So there's a lot that goes into that. So as an endpoint security engineer, they want you to know how other penetration testing, threats act. How are they going to break into your system so you can properly implement this security? Information assurance engineer. So this is part in terms of assessment and authorization, A&A. So they're doing a lot of implementing security controls on systems to give them a proper authorization to operate. So this is a lot in terms of government standards. Government wants to implement proper controls to be able to release a system into production. So using a lot of NIST standards. There's a lot to learn about NIST standards in terms of this position as well. So let's think in terms of, so they actually provide here entry to expert level for, this is for the NSA, for ISSPs. So they'll just give an example of the different levels and how to get in there. But let's look here at a position by ISAT. So it all boils down to when you look at these positions that they're going to basically want you to understand at a high level what some of these what a risk management framework is, how to properly implement security, what is security. Other than that, I'm going to kind of look at some of the tools. So we mentioned Kali Linux. So Kali Linux, I use this a lot on a daily basis in terms of just for penetration testing, and I'm growing to like it since I use it every day. But it's a great open source Debian-based Linux distribution. So, it can be geared towards penetration testing, security research, forensics, and reverse engineering. It's also a great tool for, security analysts as well. They can basically, implement some sort of, tools to, conduct forensics analysis on some of these incidents that may occur. So if you wanted to, go in and download it, it gives you just various different options to do it. You can do it mobile, virtual machine. You can do an image. You can put it on an ARM device. So just think in terms of like a small embedded chip, cloud containers, and so forth. WSL. So I currently use it in Windows Subsystem, but I also have a virtual machine as well. So if you were to do a virtual machine, you can download a whatever virtualization technology you want to use, VMware, VirtualBox. Is anybody is the screen frozen for anyone else? Let me reshare it. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. What about now? Is it still frozen for you guys? Okay, great. So, depending on how you want to install Kali Linux, you can do, if you have, VMware or VirtualBox. So all you have to do is, download it. It's about 2.6 gigabytes, and it's going to provide you with a, for example, this is going to give you a zip file to where you can implement into your VirtualBox, for example, I have here. So I have a variety of different VirtualBox images here. Metasploitable is a good one for practicing some penetration testing of vulnerabilities. But they're going to give you that. Let's see. Like say for example, give you an ISO. You can do ISO as well, but you can just to go through the steps. You can select an image. For example, I have this Kali Linux image, this ISO file. You can specify down to the version of OS you want to use. You can give it a name. Let's put test for now. You can set up all this, unintended installation. You can give it, memory in terms of RAM. You can give it processor. So I'll just give it, let's say, let's give it like 4 gigs. Here. So let's give it like 4 gigs. Let's give it 2 CPUs to use. This is a good way to, okay, I'm sorry about that. It's VirtualBox that doesn't like that. They're probably blocking it from my view. Let's see if I can. Yes, I just realized that right now. I'm sorry about that. So here's an example of my VirtualBox that I have, different Kali Linux, Security Onion, CyberOps Workstation, and so forth. But so if you were to download Kali as an ISO, you can select it and use it to install Kali Linux. Here's the options, the hardware options for providing it with RAM. So if you want it to run faster, or if you want to run it on minimum specs, you could give it its own hard disk. So this is going to create one for me. I don't have to really make any changes. So if it's too much information for you to go through and install, you can go to guided mode. So I'll go through guided mode for this portion. I'll go name it test, select the image. So it'll automatically detect the OS for me. So it's saying it's Ubuntu 64. And if I were to go next, I'll give it more RAM again, and 2 CPUs. I'll let it create the virtual disk now, specify of 25 gigs. You can change it if you wanted to give it more space. And there we go. So I could just double click it, launch it, and it'll go ahead and power up the VM for me. So I'm going to go ahead and use graphic install. I want to use it with graphics. I don't want to use command line. So it's going to have me go through the overall installation steps, just selecting language, location. It's just going to go through and install for me. So this version of CompTIA, the ISO, is going to provide me with all the tools. If I decide to do like a Windows subsystem, so I could just go to Microsoft Store. If you guys have Microsoft, wait for this to load, and I could just type in just Kali, and it will let me install it here. It might take a little bit more configuration changes to be able to add this in. You need to have virtualization enabled in your BIOS. Might need to install some other subsystem requirements. But this is going to be kind of bare bones. It's not going to have any tools, but you can go ahead and just run a particular command in the terminal and it'll provide you with all the tools. I prefer to use the subsystem. I'm used to use the virtual box, but I just like the integration with WSL. But after you install it all, I'm not going to install it off of this. So here's my subsystem, but you'll be presented with this desktop, for example. If you were to go and look at the applications here, you'll see that it categorizes all the different tools that come with Kali Linux, from information gathering all the way to social engineering attacks. So whatever task you're doing, whatever you want to do in terms of, like say, for example, I want to do vulnerability analysis, you can just go there and you can just spin up, say, Nikto to do some web browser vulnerability scanning, Nmap to scan a network, Bloodhound to look at an overall Active Directory structure in terms of how different systems in the Active Directory are connected, and you can pretty much do a lot with this. So now, so here we go in terms of, I wonder if it closed my terminal, but so here's a normal terminal for Kali Linux. So basic things you could do is you could change your directory to, say, I want to go to my documents directory. I can ls to list the different files and folders within the documents directory. Say if I go and I get lost, I can always do pwd to print my working directory, and it'll tell me, hey, you're in the home of the Drake documents. And so for this example, I'm going to go to my workshop. So I have a script here. So if I want to do Python in here, I could just type in Python 3 and I can start doing things like 5 + 5. And it's going to do the math for me already. So you could do Python there, or you can create a script file. And you can do your script here. For this example, it's going to connect to a socket on a particular IP that you specify. So if I want to connect to an IP address of 192.168.1.1 with the port number of 1433 for some sort of SQL server, it'll connect to it if it's available, and the listening service is allowing connection. So that's one thing I could do. And if I wanted to run it, I could just type in Python 3 and the script, and it would run it for me. So, and there's also different tools. If I want to use Nmap, it'll give me all the different options for Nmap if I were to scan a system. Maybe if I wanted to, let's say, get something from a website, maybe they have a file available, I can just wget it. Let's say it's on Amazon.com/file1. Maybe that's the name of it. Then it would go there and get that file one for me. There's different things you can do there. So if I were to go ahead and actually use some tools on a system, for example, let me get my connection back up. I'm connected to a VPN right now for a particular system that I'm going to take a look at in a penetration testing perspective. Let me just make sure that the system is running. So this system is running on the proving grounds for OS for offensive security. Just gonna kind of go through how I would approach this system. If I can just get it to work. Okay, so once the system's up, so say for example, as a penetration tester, ethical hacker, I've given a system, say maybe I have an external access to a company. They tell me, hey, I want you to look at this web server we have available. Here's the name, the DNS name for it, the IP address, whatever they want to give me. Maybe they won't even give me it, so it depends. But say for example, I'm given the IP address, and I want to, I do all my due diligence. I do research on the company. I look at their, what kind of systems they tend to employ in their network, and so now I want to take a look at the system. Just using Nmap, I want to get there's different flags within Nmap. I can get a service version, and I could do a basic script scan, so CD on the IP address 192.168.122.70. Maybe that's what I discovered as the IP address for the system, and I can go ahead and let Nmap do its thing. I can hit enter, and it'll give me an overall estimation of time remaining. Other tools you can use could be auto recon. This will do a lot of work for you in an automated fashion. Just another set of tools. You kind of have to go and download this yourself. It's not available within Kali Linux, but this is going to do a lot of, it's going to do Nmap for me, and it's going to try to enumerate services, and just makes it easier for me that I don't have to do it on basically on the side, so it saves me time. So let's see. This has a different command to run instead of mmap. So I'll specify the target again. It's weird. Just used auto recon a couple days ago. It's not working for me for some reason, but it'll go through. Let's see if I can find something that kind of gives you an example of what it looks like. It's going to give you a results folder, and within that results folder, it's going to provide you with the scans that it goes through. So for this example, for this system, it found that port 22 and port 80 were open. So it's running SSH and it's running a website, and it's going to enumerate everything for me. It's going to provide me information on the SSH host key. On the website, it's going to provide me some of the directories. I didn't find any. Give me an example of what it's running, like Nginx 1.18. Normally, it'll give you an image of what is presented on the website, and it'll also provide you with a way to move forward with manual commands. So you say, hey, run this brute forcing on the logins to see if you can, if it's using weak username and passwords. Let's go ahead and check up on the other mmap scan. So this mmap scan for that system I talked about, provides me with, here's all the different open ports and services that's going on right now. It's running a web server on 80. It's running MSRPC, NetBIOS, and it's basically giving me an understanding of what type of system it is as well. So I can right off the bat I can tell this is a Microsoft Windows system, and it's also running 3389, so it's running a SQL Server. And it's going to give me RDAP. Sorry, I didn't title SQL for some reason. It'll give me RDAP information, RDP. It'll tell me its target name, what the system name is, and so forth. And I can use all that in what I attempt to do. So I could go and use that information to go to the website that it has available. So it's going to be port 80, and I can see here, here's the web server that it has. And I could try different things, type in admin, admin password, user pass, or I could brute force it with like Burp Suite or different tools. Burp Suite, another great tool for web testing. Let's wait for it to load up. So Burp Suite allows me to proxy responses and requests to my browser and the web server. So just going to that, it's getting a GET request to the top directory from this website. I can intercept the response, and this is what's going to be displayed in front of me. So what we see here, that's all right here in HTML. And I could go through here. This is great to get an understanding if maybe there's something hidden. Maybe there's they forgot to remove the default credentials from here. Session key maybe is right here, but from what I can see here, there's nothing. Just showing me that you can enter your username and password, and you can render this and view it. see the raw and hex of it. So this this proxy browser that I have set up hasn't even gotten the request yet, so I could drop it and nothing happens, or I could forward it and get the page. So you can see how you can do a lot with it. So say for example, I'm putting in admin right now, but I intercept this request and I want to try and brute force different usernames and password information. I could send that to intruder, and it lets me select where I want to insert the points of username and password. So I select those, the admin right here, and I can give it a payload, and payloads all the things or sec lists. Those are great GitHub repositories that you can use to do this type of attack. So for this example, I'm going to go to sec lists. Let's see, where's it at? Can't see it. Here we go, sec lists, and their payloads that they provide me. That's different techniques I could do for vulnerabilities, but I could give it, payload 1 being admin, provide it with usernames. So let's just do this list. I go to payload 2. Sorry, I forgot to change the attack. Payload 2, I could load up the passwords, and let's just do 500 words passwords, and I can start the attack, and it's going to go through the response and request process. So it's going to post the Oracle username and password 123456, and the response is going to be whether or not this is successful or not. That's one thing I could do with Burp Suite. I'm just going to go ahead and try admin. That didn't work. Let's see. Maybe I could do some research on this and say, what are the default credentials for Plantronics? Okay, do my open source. So it's just the, let's see, Plantronics. Let's see what page. So let's see if this is going to point me in the right direction. So that says admin for the username. I also need a password. I tried admin, that didn't work. Try admin password, see if that works. That one didn't work. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Didn't work. So I could do some more research online. Maybe let's see what the so that if that doesn't get me anywhere, I could go ahead and see what else they have available here. Let's see. Sorry. What coding language? We're going to be using Python 3. Yes. You don't have to have too much knowledge of it. We're going to go over that. Sorry, from a basic level. We're going to be, getting understanding of how to go about producing a simple script. So you should be able to get some familiarization with that. So let's say we just want you to understand how to go ahead and create maybe a script where you can go in and make a definition where you're just going to say, get the input of, maybe it's going to ask you, what is my password, or what's the password, and you're going to be able to enter that in, and username, just some basic things like that, just to get you familiar with the program. And that's going to basically help you build off and make some scripts. So in a sense, for security work, for my example, I tend to make scripts to do automatic exploitation on previous vulnerabilities that I have done in the past. So maybe I need to run a script that will use MSF Pro to exploit this vulnerability, or use MSF Venom to make a payload to deliver that payload based off of a particular service and port. And after that, if it's successful when I get a shell, then to run these commands and so forth. So that's basically what I would do with that. It's a little bit more in depth, but you can also use this to automate work in terms of maybe you are needing to check a system for accounts that are maybe expired, or so it'd be kind of perfect for a sense of Linux. But there's also PowerShell scripts you could do for Windows, for example. So coding, there was a good chunk of it, about a week, and that was focused on being able to start from a script to maybe creating a quick little game. OpenAI with Intruder. I haven't dabbled too much in OpenAI, but from what I've heard, it's a great tool to be able to go in and tell it to find a vulnerability for you, and you can do some exploitation from that perspective. I tend to do everything on my own. I don't rely on programs as much in terms of automation, just from what I've been taught in terms of doing OSCP and so forth. I find that some programs, when they're automated, they're not going to find those particular interactions that may include a vulnerability. So it's something you have to do manually. But I mean, if you were to provide OpenAI with source code and told it to find a vulnerability, then I'm sure it's going to be able to point something out. So it's not present here, but if I did an all exclusive port scan, I could probably find maybe an FTP service running, and I could log into the FTP service, and maybe it's going to provide me with some sort of MySQL backup. So I've done this box already, but example would be, I connect to the port that it's running. So maybe it's running like FTP 1221, which is not default, FTP being 21. But I could go to that port, pull this back up, get an understanding of maybe it's password protected. So I'd run like a RAR to John to create a hash file out of that RAR file or zip file, whatever it may be. And then I can use John to run through that hash and see if it matches up based off a word list like rocku.txt that I may throw at it. And hopefully that backup file may have username and passwords that I could use to exploit MySQL that hasn't shown up here on my scan. It's just a basic scan, so I would have to do like tac to do all ports from all the way to 65,535 ports, and it should hit some of those that I missed. That's why it's good to have auto recon, because it'll automate it for you and it'll find all that information. But I could find the, say for example, SQL password and connect to the SQL server and see what kind of privileges I have as that SQL user, and maybe I could execute command shells and modify, since it's Microsoft Office or Microsoft Windows, I would need to modify the registry to provide me with maybe an entry point. Maybe I can find passwords in there, and once I get access to that system, I can then privask, whether it be a binary permissions that may be available for me to rewrite by just creating my own shell exe to reverse back to me, giving me higher permissions, or some other misconfiguration. But by me going through all this, everything that I find is going to be a security misconfiguration or unpatched system in a sense, and that's kind of where cybersecurity becomes important in terms of understanding your systems and what you need to be able to patch for. Like for example, this Windows system, you need to keep it up to date, and basically install those security technologies that can detect me trying to attack and get into the system. Class starts, I believe it was supposed to, the 23rd, I believe is the first day, but I'll be teaching on the 24th. So while we have 3 minutes left, does anybody have any other questions? Oh, actually, no, we have 30 minutes left. Sorry, I'm a little lost on time. Anybody have any questions so far that I can cover for you? I'm not too sure about that. What other course are you in? Oh, C#. What are you having problems with, Lynn, with installing that? Okay. I'm not too familiar with Kali Linux Mac OS install. Let's see if I can find something for you. So some of the great resources you can use for getting an understanding of what kind of vulnerabilities you have out there in the wild. Cisco Talos provides some of that threat intelligence. Threat intelligence is a big area in security, just to get an understanding of what kind of threat actors are out there, what they are using to break into systems. For example, we can see some here, vendors point to Google, Apple, IBM. So this all has a 0-day vulnerability category and a disclosed vulnerabilities category. Let's take a look at some of these 0-day reports. Hey Lynn, are you trying to dual boot with macOS? With macOS? let's see. See VirtualBox on Mac. So here's a VirtualBox build instruction for Mac. I'll look into that on the side for you, Lynn. So some of these zero-day reports, they just give you an overall understanding of who's currently affected right now. They probably aren't going to give too much information for some of these 0 days, just for the fact that they need to provide like Apple and Google time, Apple time to patch them. Well, we could look at some of these disclosed vulnerabilities. So we have some pointing here to Mr. DC, web server session information, ASIS, RTAX 82U. So this is information disclosure vulnerability. I utilize the latest version of Kali. Then. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So, this being an information, yes, I will be teaching the course. Oh, you're asking what type? Oh, sorry about that, Lynn. I use WSL on my Windows 10 instance. So I got it through the Microsoft Store. I also have it installed on my VirtualBox, so if I wanted to use it there as well. But since this being an information disclosure vulnerability, we could expect some maybe sensitive information getting leaked. So just by this is for the router, for the ASIS RTX router, just by sending a specially crafted network packet, it's going to lead to disclosure of sensitive information, and you could trigger this by network request. So if I were to understand what type of packet I need to craft, I could go into SCAPI and create it and send it to the router and get that information that they are pointing to right here. So gives you product details on it. So here it is, that AX5400 dual band Wi-Fi gaming router that is currently vulnerable. And it may break down the overall code as well of where it's vulnerable to. So saying here that the CFG underscore server and client binaries, they're used for the configuration of the mesh network setup. And just because the so the binary for the CFG server is bound to TCP port 778 by default, and that'll expose the basic functionality. So if we're to send a properly crafted packet to that port and try to request information, lead to information disclosure. But it really gets down to nitty gritty on how it's vulnerable and what you can do. So they created an actual Python script to do this as well. And they sent it an overall message, and this is what it leaked in terms of bytes. So there's various different other ones as well. Denial of service, buffer overflows that can potentially lead to remote code execution. We can go there and look at all that. Okay, Lynn, let's see what the problem is here. So this is, I'm not too sure if this kind of might help you in a sense. I just see that they had an issue with that. So let's talk about some of the cybersecurity trends. Cisco Umbrella provides some trend reports. So let's look at top threats currently going on. Crypto mining. Essentially, attackers are leveraging a vulnerability to get this crypto mining software on your system to basically make them money. Phishing always been a top threat, especially when maybe a company doesn't provide adequate security training to employees, and it's very easy for them to go in and click a link and download an executable within the email, and gives threat actors a instant access to the system. Trojans, so there's a variety of different malware types, Trojans, viruses, worms. But Trojan, basically, we know that Trojan horse is just an overall external ruse to what's malicious internally. So it could be a key generator for Microsoft Office to generate a key, so you can get the full package, the full product. But underneath that that program that actually works is a malicious like backdoors and so forth. And ransomware, it's a big profit. It's been growing a lot just by targeting school districts and other institutions by maybe an attacker got access to the system with the vault credentials or through phishing, and now your whole system is encrypted, and you now need to pay a Bitcoin fee. So it's very profitable for them to encrypt the whole system. So the big problem with that was the gas pipeline that happened. The gas pipeline ransomware, the Colonial Pipeline. So they had to basically shut down some of their transportation of gas, leading to shortages. They probably got a big fine in terms of getting their internal systems breached. So this is based off a hacker group, DarkSide, who had did that. They got into the network, they stole data, all within a 2-hour window. So they stole the data and they encrypted the internal network data. And if Colonial Pipeline had proper security controls in place, they could have had backups to bring all this back up online and avoid any further damage. So that's an easy way to get basically combat ransomware is through proper backups, so that you don't have to pay a fine to whatever regulation you breached just by getting your data stolen. You don't have to pay the Bitcoin ransomware. They actually did pay the ransomware as well, and it still took them forever to decrypt their information. So in a sense, it wasn't even worth paying the ransom. So also Cisco Umbrella talks about how these cyber criminals are basically growing. They're grouping up. They're becoming highly coordinated. They have multi-step attacks. So maybe they do phishing. They get access to a system, and like DarkSide, they exfiltrate the data and they encrypt the internal network. So it's all their multi-step attacks. and possibly they maintain persistence in the network by creating accounts that they can access, running scheduled tasks to provide them with further access or install rootkits and backdoors. So, um, using old technology to launch new ransomware attacks, and there was a big thing in terms of the overall, fake CDC and vaccine sign up sites that had come into play. Have I applied these attacks in my training? Um, in terms of as a pen tester, it's good to know how the enemy attacks, and say, for example, if a customer wants you to basically emulate this type of attack. So, for example, for me, being able to know what the MITRE attack framework is, building a attack plan based off of like an HPT group that targets the defense sector. Let's see. So maybe I want to emulate this attack, this APT 17 deputy dog China-based threat group. So they since they actually target my sector, defense industry, I'd be focused on them. Whether I'm doing an emulated pen test attack or I'm on the defensive side, and I need to understand what threats are out there. So I need to be able to understand how to defend against those threats. So doing research on this, APT group, I want to understand what techniques they use. So, they target enterprise domain. There's an overall, technique ID that MITRE gives, and basically how they acquire infrastructure and web services. So maybe they create pages in Microsoft TechNet for C2 infrastructure. So that's how they do the command and control between their servers and the malware they might install in a network. So they also establish accounts. So they will create these profiles within this C2 infrastructure to appear legitimate. They have their own software named Black Coffee. So it's going to use Windows command shells, file. It's going to be for file and directory discovery. So you can always go into this and it'll give you a breakdown of everything. It'll tell you what it's for, like discovery, and just further on how it's used. So just being able to know all these things and how I can emulate that attacker, and maybe I need to create that Microsoft profile thing and establish command and control to hack a network and create this software that does what it says as well. So there's also tools as well that'll emulate some of these APTs. Like there's Attack IQ, which implements these APT techniques that MITRE attack has, and you can create a plan that'll go through different techniques and see if it's effective on the enterprise network, and it'll generate a report and give you what is effective, what user account or what privileges it executed everything as, and it's a great way to get an understanding of how vulnerable your network is in terms of this being attacked by this threat actor. I hope that kind of explained things for you, Bradsky. Also, say for example, if you decided to go to a interview for a cybersecurity position, they might ask you about this as well. It would be specified in the job description to know the MITRE attack framework. Besides monitor attack, they also have defend. That's currently in beta still, but it points to some of these attack techniques and actually gives you an idea of how to defend against them as well. So let's say we'll just go to disk encryption. So disk encryption, and it points to related attack techniques. So here's defense evasion, hiding artifacts, hidden file system discovery, and you just go through this. Sometimes it might be on the car by MITRE that kind of gives you an example of how to find this type of information within Splunk. So your security information event managing system, where all your logs get basically stored aggregated to, and you can search through everything and see if something matches up to a technique or tactic. So let's see. So here's an example of overall attacks in terms of the overall threat landscape that we have out there. So we can see here, FireEye provides this for us. There's been 567,251 attacks today, and you can see the overall players in this field. So yellow being a attacker, and the target being green. So we can see all the various attackers. So we have Ukraine hitting the U.S. and it's pointing to APT. Let's see. Oh, it's actually that's United Kingdom as well. So you can see how everyone's basically attacking each other, and there's a lot going on in terms of the overall threat landscape. You need to be able to secure your systems because you're always facing that threat and the possible breach. That's why you always need to continue to research threats, get an understanding of the vulnerabilities out there, so you can patch your systems up to date. Like what we saw in that vulnerability report, we need to be a step ahead in terms of these vulnerabilities. Is there, so when it comes to vulnerability analysis, just an overall vulnerability management program. So we have a say we have say this is Google Chrome. We're using Google Chrome within the environment. Maybe we know what the overall vulnerability is, and we need to be able to determine what systems are affected, if there's a patch available, if not, when is there going to be a patch, and how might we be able to remediate the vulnerability while we wait for a patch to come through. Sometimes there might be a countermeasure, maybe like say if there's like a system that is vulnerable, possibly we could put that keep that segregated from any other systems while we wait for the patch to come through. So separating it in a virtual local area network, so it can't reach any other systems. Like for example, the open network, open internet. So if it's exposed to the internet, then someone could easily come in and exploit that vulnerability. So that's one aspect to that. But yeah, there's always different vulnerabilities coming out, and you need to get an understanding of how to basically lower that risk. So management is finding it acceptable, and operations can continue to go on. Does anybody have any other questions so far? Okay. So I guess, cyber warfare. In terms of like on the offensive side, Gretzky, like being involved in cyber warfare, or um, I would say, I mean, I haven't been involved in that aspect, but some companies are kind of moving towards the overall, engagement of, adversaries that may try to attack you. So, for example, where was it at? So MITRE, I'm not sure if it's in defend or the other portion, but MITRE provides a way for companies to engage the attackers. So it kind of falls within cyber warfare. So if you're being attacked by this group, how are you going to fight back? So can you throw in decoys? Can trick them to give up their tactics techniques by maybe setting up a honeypot or a honey net, which is just fake systems that are vulnerable for a reason to watch them exploit. In terms of the government perspective, they might have some sort of hack the hacker back. Haven't been too involved in that. I'm sure it's there. Just something that I don't know about. Other companies may hack the hacker back as well. It's kind of moving towards that perspective. Just the fact that defense is kind of falling behind, so they got to basically recuperate and try to alleviate some of that tension by attacking back. Um, so I'll kind of talk about essentially how networking works in a security aspect. So kind of need to know the basics of overall networking and how maybe a client such as myself on a web browser connects to a server. So there's always various different layers of the TCP IP model of how it goes from Ethernet cord to like a switch router up to going across the network to maybe I'm going to google.com, so it's going to google.com's web server, and how that information is overall presented, if it's encrypted, plain text. So moving up the TCP/IP and coming all the way back to how it's presented in the application form. So presentation, like if we look at the presentation layer, we can see here that this is plain text. I can read it. It's not encrypted. This is my application as well. I have a session going on in the background. Oh, sorry, I didn't see what you said, Bradsky. I have a session going on in the background. That's maybe TCP or UDP. You're talking about maybe two companies competing against each other. Is that what you're asking? Two competitors? Yeah, so I'm sure it does go on. So think in terms of a insider threat. Maybe Walgreens has an employee that they send out to collect information on Fred Meyer by applying to a position there. They get access to internal systems, and now they can go in and try and steal data on Fred Meyer and pass that back to Walgreens. So that's more of like like an espionage where they're stealing like trade secrets and stuff from Fred Meyer, all for the benefit of Walgreens. So there's always that threat, that insider threat aspect. Whether it's a disgruntled employee or potential competitor employee. That's something that you kind of look for as well in terms of security. Watching user actions, just looking at logs and seeing that a user is trying to access things that they're not supposed to. That's not part of their job position. So HR trying to access, I guess, like an admin account on a server. That's not something you'd see. So you'd see the login errors, all the login connections, pointing back to that system that the HR employee is on, and you'll be able to see that it's in their user account as well. So maybe it's Amy Jones or something, Amy.Jones. So you can see all that. You see Amy.Jones accessed this system at this IP from her system at this IP, and they try logging in to that account. So that's how you might look at user actions to see if they're doing something they're not supposed to. And they can point to an insider threat or some other mischievous activity going on. Could be an external threat got access to their account. So it could be a lot of different things. So that's why you have to go in there, to do your incident response and analysis and determine what actually happened. Does anybody have any questions? Any other questions? Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for doing the class.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for attending.
All right. So thank you so much, Drake. Everyone, if you want to say thanks to Drake, just put it in the chat box. Okay. So just a few reminders for everyone. I'll just share something. Okay. All right. So we have a upcoming bootcamp, cybersecurity bootcamp, and the classes will start on January 24th. Right? So our instructor is of course Drake Caruso. So if you want a free 15-minute career counseling with our career counselor Yasmin Ali, just scan the QR code in the photo. And yep, we're here to help. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a good night. We'll be sending the recording of this workshop in your emails. So just watch out. Okay, so I guess that's it.